My parents embezzled my $120,000 MBA fund for my golden sister's dream house. Justice, karma, and Uncle Jake's merciless plan made everything right. I never thought I'd find myself sharing such a story on Reddit, but here we are. Recently, I, 28F, discovered that my parents had misappropriated my $120,000 MBA fund to help my sister Ashley, 35F, and her fiancé Nathan, 37M, purchase a house. I'm still struggling to process the magnitude of their betrayal, and this entire situation feels surreal. Let me guide you through the initial phase of this nightmare. My paternal grandparents were exceptionally affluent and placed immense value on education. They embodied traditional values in the truest sense, emphasizing diligence, financial prudence, and strategic investments. Despite living in a different state, limiting our visits, they consistently expressed their concern for my academic future during our conversations. Education remains the sole possession that can never be stripped away. My grandmother would often remind me, words that now carry a bitter irony. My grandfather passed away 3 years ago after a brief illness. Though devastating, we still had grandmother as our family's cornerstone, acknowledging every milestone and achievement with heartfelt correspondence and thoughtful packages. She departed last year, and on that day, I found myself in my apartment, reviewing every letter she had ever sent me. Unknown to me then, she and Grandpa had been constructing something far more substantial for my future, as each letter contained life wisdom and typically a modest check marked, for your education fund. The distribution initially seemed fair when their will was read. My parents inherited savings and property. Ashley received family heirlooms and grandmother's jewelry collection valued at tens of thousands, and I was bequeathed a substantial education fund specifically earmarked for my MBA studies. According to the will, my parents were designated as trustees until I required the funds. Being employed at the time, I felt grateful for my grandparents' thoughtful consideration of my future. Never did I imagine my parents would tamper with the trust. In retrospect, I should have recognized the warning signs. Ashley had always been our family's crown jewel, the golden child, from my earliest memories. It's challenging to express without sounding bitter, but she was undeniably their favorite. Everything she touched seemed to turn to gold in their eyes. She was exceptionally talented, hardworking, and unique, or so they believed. I vividly recall my high school graduation day. Despite winning a prestigious science competition, securing a full scholarship to college, and delivering the valedictorian speech, my parents were barely present in the moment, absorbed in their phones throughout my address. Yet later that evening, when Ashley, who had already abandoned college twice, mentioned considering a teaching career, they were absolutely ecstatic. "You have such a natural gift with children," they exclaimed. My achievements that day were acknowledged with a mere perfunctory, "good job." This pattern persisted throughout my life. After graduating with honors and securing a position at a prestigious firm, I've climbed the corporate ladder over the past 6 years, earning respect and admiration from both superiors and colleagues. As a senior project manager, I now oversee a team of 15 and manage multi-million-dollar accounts. Yet to my parents, I remained merely the practical one, the one who had it easy because of my natural intelligence. Ashley, meanwhile, traversed various careers before settling into teaching. Nathan serves as the head zookeeper at our local zoo, while she currently holds the position of kindergarten administrator at a small private school. While I harbor no personal animosity towards them, they're decent people. Their combined income is decidedly modest despite their contentment in their careers. For the past year, their need for a house had dominated every conversation. Each family gathering transformed into a discourse about real estate prices and the futility of renting. They would bemoan the market's unfairness while eyeing properties well beyond their means. Despite being in their mid-30s, Ashley and Nathan were still viewed as young souls requiring assistance, with my parents nodding sympathetically and reassuring them, "You deserve a beautiful home, and it's incredibly challenging for young people nowadays." About a month ago, I began preparing my MBA program applications. This wasn't an impulsive decision. I had been meticulously planning this transition for years, conducting extensive program research, strategically developing my career trajectory, and maintaining an impeccable professional record. My goal was to enroll in a prestigious program that would facilitate my advancement into executive leadership roles at my current company. Every C-suite executive possessed an MBA from a distinguished institution, and I was determined to follow the same path. One evening, I broached the subject of the education fund with my parents, as application fees alone for elite MBA programs could amount to thousands of dollars. I needed to ascertain exactly how much was accessible. Their response should have been my first genuine red flag. "Don't concern yourself with that right now," my father mumbled, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. My mother hastily interjected, "Just focus on your applications for now. We'll address that when the time comes." They then abruptly steered the conversation toward Ashley and Nathan's house hunting endeavors. Initially, I attempted to dismiss their evasiveness, rationalizing that perhaps they were simply disorganized with the paperwork. However, something felt distinctly amiss. A week later, I raised the issue more directly, explaining that I needed to know the fund's status to budget for multiple applications to prestigious institutions. That's when they dropped the bombshell. "We used the MBA money for Ashley," my mother announced with shocking casualness, her voice as light as if discussing the weather forecast. The words hit me like a physical blow, each syllable hammering against my consciousness. "She's buying a house with Nathan." The room seemed to tilt sideways as I stared at her, desperately hoping I had misheard. My father chimed in, his voice dripping with self-righteousness, stating that Ashley needed it more urgently, and it wouldn't be fair for me to receive a free ride when Ashley had struggled with student loans. When I demanded clarification, years of suppressed frustration erupted like a volcano. I'm not proud of my reaction, but it was the culmination of decades of inequitable treatment, every overlooked achievement, every dismissed success, every moment of being the practical child crashing through my composure. My voice trembled as I confronted them about their betrayal, about how they could so callously misappropriate funds my grandparents had explicitly designated for my education. I pointed out the illegality of their actions, my words tumbling out in a desperate attempt to make them understand the magnitude of their transgression. My mother merely shrugged, her eyes dismissive, as if I were being melodramatic. "You'll figure something out," she said nonchalantly. "It's not like you can't take out loans like everyone else." They acted as if they had committed no wrongdoing, as if neither my future nor my grandparents' wishes held any significance. When I mentioned potential legal action, though not a lawyer myself, the blatant illegality of their actions seemed obvious. Do you know what they did? They laughed. Not just a chuckle, but outright laughter. "With what money?" my father sneered, looking me straight in the eye. "You can't even afford a lawyer." My mother added with derision, "Don't be ridiculous. This is a family matter." The humiliation I experienced in that moment defies description. I stood there, stunned, as the realization crystallized. They had always viewed me as an afterthought, someone whose future they could sacrifice on the altar of Ashley's desires. My financial independence, successful career, and academic achievements meant nothing to them. I would forever remain the lesser child. That night, sleep eluded me. My thoughts kept circling back to how my grandparents had trusted my parents to act ethically. They never knew the true dynamics of our household, as I had never shared how I was treated. After all, was it really mistreatment? They simply loved Ashley more. They weren't abusive, were they? The following morning, I arrived at work early and requested a private meeting with my supervisor, Mr. Thompson. More than just a boss, he had been a mentor since I joined the company, supporting my career aspirations and witnessing my progression from a junior position to team leader. More crucially, he possessed experience in corporate law and maintained connections with prominent law firms. I also resolved to contact my father's cousin, Uncle Jake, a successful businessman who had always seen through my parents' favoritism. He consistently demonstrated genuine interest in my achievements and future goals despite his limited presence during my upbringing. Moreover, he was the only family member whose influence and success surpassed my parents. Something within me snapped when my parents mocked me. Though I had never intended for things to turn ugly, always being the quiet one, the sensible one who avoided causing waves, they assumed I was powerless. However, they were about to discover that the daughter they had consistently undervalued possessed far more resources than they had imagined. First update. In the 2 weeks since my initial post, events have unfolded with unexpected velocity. The situation escalated more rapidly than I could have anticipated. Following my consultation with Mr. Thompson, he not only offered his complete support, but also connected me with a colleague at Wilson & Partners, one of the city's most prestigious law firms. His words resonated deeply. This isn't merely about money. It's about holding your parents accountable and honoring your grandparents' wishes. The meeting with the attorneys proved illuminating. They confirmed that my parents' actions constituted a clear violation of both the will's terms and their fiduciary duties. What shocked me most was learning that my parents could face criminal charges for their actions. The lawyers uncovered something particularly disturbing. Long before they confessed to me, my parents had begun systematically transferring funds into Ashley's account. Uncle Jake's intervention, however, proved to be the true game changer. Within hours of my LinkedIn message, he contacted me. His response exceeded my wildest expectations. "I've always known your parents played favorites," he stated grimly. "But stealing from their own daughter? That crosses every conceivable line. Don't concern yourself with legal expenses. I'm handling everything." Uncle Jake proved to be more than just talk. He took immediate action, assembling an elite team of estate law specialists and engaging a forensic accountant to trace every penny of the misappropriated funds. Within days, they had compiled overwhelming evidence demonstrating how my parents had methodically drained the education fund over several months. The initial confrontation occurred on Friday. My parents' attorney reached out, attempting to negotiate a family settlement in exchange for dropping legal proceedings. They offered to cover a portion of my MBA expenses. Uncle Jake's response was ruthless. You will either face criminal charges or return the entire sum plus interest and penalties. There will be no negotiations. My parents' reaction was priceless. They began bombarding me with messages. How could you involve outsiders in family matters? We were going to help you eventually. You're destroying this family. Without responding, I forwarded everything to Uncle Jake's legal team. He then revealed the second phase of his strategy. Beyond pursuing the stolen funds, he was pushing for a comprehensive audit of my parents' financial transactions, suggesting there might be additional irregularities we were currently unaware of. Yesterday, Ashley finally broke her silence. In a lengthy email, she claimed ignorance about the source of the house money. Mom and Dad said they had savings set aside for us, she wrote. I never imagined they would steal your money. She concluded by pleading for me to be reasonable and find a family solution. I showed Uncle Jake her email. His response was characteristically direct. Forward it to the attorneys. It's evidence she was aware of the money after the fact, but made no attempt at restitution. That makes her complicit. This morning brought the most satisfying development yet. My parents' lawyer called Uncle Jake in a panic. The forensic accountant had discovered that my parents had begun exercising their power of attorney to transfer funds even before my grandmother's passing. This could significantly amplify the charges. My parents are now making desperate attempts to backpedal. Mom left a tearful voicemail begging me to contact them, saying they would find a way to repay the money. Dad acknowledged in an email that they might have made a mistake, but maintained they were just trying to help the family. Uncle Jake's advice remained unwavering. Don't respond to anything. Let them panic. When you were vulnerable, they mocked you. Now it's their turn to feel helpless. None of this would have been possible without Mr. Thompson's extraordinary support. Beyond providing an outstanding reference letter, he has already approved my leave of absence for when I begin my MBA studies. Today he remarked, "You're demonstrating remarkable composure. Not many could handle this situation with such professionalism. Unless my parents return the entire sum plus penalties, the legal team is preparing to file formal charges next week." Uncle Jake predicts they'll need to liquidate assets to cover everything, but in his words, that's their predicament, not yours. I'm currently staying with a friend, and building security has been instructed to deny my parents entry after they attempted to visit my apartment. Uncle Jake has also retained a private investigator to document any attempts they make to contact me, material that could potentially be used to demonstrate harassment. Second update. 3 weeks have elapsed since my last report, and the situation has deteriorated dramatically for my parents. At last, I can share the intricate details of our legal strategy's development. The forensic investigation revealed far more than we initially anticipated. During our first court filing, the initial bombshell detonated. Uncle Jake's team discovered that my parents had been abusing their power of attorney over my grandmother's finances during her final months. Beyond embezzling my MBA fund, they had been systematically redirecting funds to Ashley long before my grandmother's passing. The evidence revealed a methodical pattern of transactions designed to channel money to Ashley. During the initial hearing, their lawyer's expression was invaluable. It became evident that he was unaware of the magnitude of their financial misconduct. After our legal team presented the documented timeline of transactions, he actually requested a recess to confer with my parents. I later learned that he confronted them about withholding crucial information, and he's now contemplating withdrawing from their case. The most startling revelation came from my grandmother's former caregiver. Upon seeing our legal notice in the estate documents, she reached out to Uncle Jake. It emerged that my grandmother had repeatedly emphasized to my parents that the money was exclusively for my education, mentioning the MBA fund multiple times during her final months. These conversations were meticulously documented in the caregiver's daily logs, where she recorded all family interactions. Ashley's involvement has taken an intriguing turn. After realizing the legal implications of accepting misappropriated funds, she retained her own counsel. This created a significant rift between her and our parents, who had expected her unwavering support. When her attorney advised her to distance herself from the situation, my parents were thrown into panic. The house situation has become particularly chaotic. The purchase is now under court scrutiny since the down payment originated from stolen funds. The matter has been reported to Ashley and Nathan's mortgage lender, who is reviewing their loan application. A fraud investigation may be initiated if my parents falsified any financial documentation they co-signed. Unexpectedly, Uncle Jake's team also uncovered that my parents had been fabricating a narrative to extended family members, claiming I had willingly surrendered my MBA fund to Ashley. They had been constructing this false narrative for months, apparently preparing their defense in case the money transfer was questioned. Several family members have now come forward with emails and messages from my parents corroborating this fabrication. The deposition proved most satisfying. My father attempted to maintain his arrogant demeanor until Uncle Jake's attorney presented evidence of their calculated scheme. It was almost painful to watch him struggle to explain their actions. My mother actually broke down when forced to admit they had never intended to repay the stolen funds. Their attempts at damage control have been almost comical. Despite recorded conversations with my grandmother and her attorneys, they're now trying to claim they were confused by the will's language. This is their third attorney. 2 have already withdrawn from the case, and they're desperately seeking a settlement. Our legal team outlined the final terms, making it clear there was no room for negotiation. They would have to repay every penny they misappropriated, with interest accruing from the day they began their theft. They would also be responsible for all our legal expenses, including the costly forensic investigation. We demanded they cease their gaslighting and attempts to rewrite history, requiring a formal written admission of their misconduct. Finally, they would need to sign a legally binding agreement to cease all communication with me. No more using family members as messengers, no more manipulative messages, no more unexpected visits. My parents' social standing isn't merely crumbling, it's imploding spectacularly. Their carefully constructed facade of respectability is shattering piece by piece. Several of their acquaintances have quietly contacted me. Their messages a mix of shock, sympathy, and thinly veiled curiosity. Word has spread through their community like wildfire, transforming them from pillars of society into social pariahs overnight. My father's golf club, where he once proudly held court every weekend, is reconsidering his membership. Apparently, several longtime members threatened to resign if he remained. My mother's bridge club not only requested her resignation as treasurer, but also uninvited her from their annual charity gala, an event she had chaired for the past decade. The whispers follow them everywhere. Can you believe they would steal from their own child? Ashley's fall from grace has been particularly dramatic. The golden child's crown has not just slipped, it has shattered. The school board, deeply concerned about having a principal embroiled in financial malfeasance, scheduled an emergency meeting to review her position. The news spread through the local education community with stunning speed, and former colleagues who once praised her natural gift with children now question her moral fitness to teach. She's struggling to secure even entry-level teaching positions, as her reputation precedes her. During her last interview, I heard the principal actually asked her directly about her role in the misappropriation of family trust funds. The strain proved too much for their relationship. Nathan moved out of their apartment last week. While Ashley accused him of insufficient support during the crisis, he countered by saying she was just like her parents. Their engagement appears to be ending. Uncle Jake's strategy of complete social and legal destruction proved more effective than anyone anticipated. When my parents made one final plea for family loyalty, he organized a family meeting, not to reconcile, but to expose their actions before the entire extended family. During this meeting, he presented a timeline of their deception, detailing the false documents they created and the lies they told different family members. The response was universal condemnation. Several family members who had initially advocated for reconciliation now publicly denounced my parents. The meeting effectively terminated any remaining family support they might have had. The most telling moment came when my mother's sister, who had always been one of their staunchest supporters, stood up and declared, "I don't even recognize who you are anymore. As for me, I've emerged stronger than ever. Beyond receiving full restitution of my MBA fund plus substantial damages, I've been accepted into a prestigious MBA program with a merit scholarship." Mr. Thompson's reference letter praised my exceptional competence and integrity in handling this crisis. My employer has been incredibly supportive, granting me leave for the MBA program and even promising an executive position upon graduation. Your handling of this situation demonstrated that you possess the leadership qualities and judgment required for senior management, Mr. Thompson informed me. Uncle Jake has become a true mentor, already discussing potential investment opportunities post-MBA and introducing me to his business network. Your grandparents would be proud, he told me. You've shown you have the backbone for business. I've relocated to an upscale apartment in a gated community that keeps my parents at bay. The doorman has their photos and strict instructions to deny them entry. Their phone numbers and emails are blocked, and all communication attempts now go directly to our legal team. The final twist of the knife? Nathan's former workplace at the zoo is adjacent to my parents' new apartment. They must view the site that symbolizes the beginning of their downfall every day. As Uncle Jake remarked with a satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth, karma can be poetic. Yesterday, I received an anonymous letter from someone in their social circle. Apparently, my mother rarely leaves home now, venturing out only for essentials, her once proud posture now hunched and furtive. My father reportedly spends hours alone at a local coffee shop, staring into space with hollow eyes, the ghost of his former confident self. Their once bustling social calendar, filled with charity galas and golf tournaments, now lies empty, a perfect metaphor for the void their actions have created in their lives. As I prepared to begin my MBA program, I find myself reflecting on my grandmother's words. Education is the one thing nobody can ever take away from you. She was more prescient than she could have known. With Uncle Jake's guidance and my own determination, I've not only secured my education fund, but also learned invaluable lessons about justice, self-worth, and the true meaning of family. Sometimes the family we choose, like Uncle Jake and Mr. Thompson, proves more loyal than the one we're born into. That concludes this saga. While I never wanted things to end this way, the destruction of my family wasn't my goal. I'm at peace knowing that justice has been served. More importantly, I've finally broken free from the shadow of being the practical child, the afterthought. In the end, my parents' attempt to deny me an education has taught me the most important lesson of all. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone, but that solitude is far better than living under the weight of injustice.